Hello, everybody. You can't
And
see
our
Anna today, but you know.
yeah, I am the graphic.
Yes, she
I,
is.
I am the graphic today.
She's
Um, we're
hiding.
I'm hiding. Hair hasn't been done, so it may be better that I should be hiding behind the graphic. I know, why should any other day be any different? Big shout out to Margie. You're watching, we know, and you've probably been very patient. We had some Google problems this morning, as always, this afternoon. It just never fails. We could write a book about Google Hangout. Our guest today is the lovely Sarita. Wait a second. Let me do this right. I'm going to get this wrong.
Tarada?
Yeah, thanks. I knew I was going to get it wrong. There's too much pressure to get that name right, from the Campaign for Safe Cosmetics. And we're going to really get into what does that mean about a safe cosmetic routine. So I'm going to put you up on the screen. Well, Karen, you can put her up on the screen. Take me down.
Do we have to? Okay.
I know, I know.
Here's Tarada. Hi. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you. It's so great to be here.
Finally, we got everything working. Okay.
It only took a half an hour.
Sorry.
Okay, did you put her up?
Yep, she's up.
I don't see hers up, but okay. You know, Sarita, get into what is a safe cosmetic,
Sure.
routine. I mean, people think, oh, I'm using my usual stuff. I'm fine. It works. I love it. But there's a real hidden danger behind a lot of cosmetics that people don't even know about. So let's get right into the nitty-gritty of it.
That's right. And so first of all, what we have to remember that when we're talking about cosmetics, we're talking about makeup, but it also includes personal care products, that huge array of shampoos and lotions and sunscreens that we use every day. And it also includes baby products, so baby bath products and baby lotions, things like that. And it's an issue that really does touch everybody, literally, every day. The average woman uses about 12 personal care products every day in her routine. The average teenage girl uses about 17 personal care products every day. And so what that means is that we're being exposed to hundreds of chemicals each day from those products. We're absorbing the chemicals through our skin, we're inhaling it, we're ingesting some of it, and some of the chemicals, well, for the vast majority of those chemicals, we don't even know. We don't have information about what it's doing to our long-term health. But for some of them, a really long list of chemicals we know have been linked with cancer, birth defects, learning disabilities, and a whole host of other serious health problems in our society. So, and we have to remember that we're not just using one product. It's a small amount of a chemical, but it's in all these different products we're using, also cleaning products and other things we're using, the pollution in the environment. So all these little amounts of chemicals are adding up. And in fact, the latest science is telling us that some chemicals are actually more potent at the lower doses. And this is especially true for hormone disruptors, chemicals that, for example, mimic estrogen in the body and are wreaking havoc in the body at the very, very small doses. So all of this, when you're using your products every day and you're getting ready in the morning or you're going out in the evening and you're putting your makeup on or whatever, it's really important to remember what it is that you're putting on your body and what you're exposing yourself to, and also your family. So this is just kind of the general overview of what that beauty routine looks like when you take a deeper look.
So what is the Campaign for Safe Cosmetics?
Yeah, so the Campaign for Safe Cosmetics, it's almost 10 years old now, and it's a coalition of over 175 environmental health and women's health and other organizations across the United States. And this campaign basically started because we first realized that there are some chemicals in cosmetics and personal care products that are really bad, carcinogens, reproductive toxins, things like that. And we thought, what's going on? So we started the Campaign for Safe Cosmetics. We've done a lot of different reviews of the science linking chemicals in these products to health effects. We do product testing to find out what's actually in that container of lotion or that bottle of baby shampoo. So we find out for a fact that, for example, there's formaldehyde in baby shampoo or lead in lipstick. So we find these things out. We know what they're doing to our health because we look at the latest science on that. So what the campaign does in a broad stroke is, for one thing, we put pressure on companies, makers and sellers of personal care products and cosmetics, to really clean up their products, to commit publicly to taking the worst of the worst chemicals out, finding safer ingredients when they're looking for substitutes, and then being transparent about it, telling the public what it is that they're doing to take our health seriously. And so we do that with both retailers of personal care products as well as manufacturers. So just recently, actually, this probably is not news to a lot of folks listening, is that Walmart just last week, the largest retailer in the United States, they announced that the company is going to be phasing out up to 10 toxic chemicals from all of both the store brand products as well as the national brands that they carry. And so basically what that means when they're reformulating and having their suppliers reformulate all these products to get these toxic chemicals out, when Walmart does it, it sends shockwaves through the industry. So that means other major retailers are also paying attention. If Walmart is, for example, taking triclosan out of all the products, triclosan, which is a bad chemical, it's a hormone disruptor, it's an antibacterial agent, so it's found in hand soaps and toothpaste and lots of other products. If they take
Fabrics
triclosan
too.
out, exactly, fabric softeners, it's in so many products. And it's also, the impact it's having on our body is pretty bad because it's an endocrine disrupting compound, but it's also in the environment and wreaking havoc on fish and other things in the environment. So if Walmart, if they should be taking triclosan out of all their products, then that means, across the country, imagine the reduction in exposure that we're going to be seeing as a result of that. So that's a huge major development exactly for all of us who've been consumers demanding safer products, as well as those of us with the Campaign for Safe Cosmetics and all of our supporters pushing for that. And also major brand manufacturers like Procter & Gamble. They're a huge company and they own brands like CoverGirl, Pantene, Herbal Essences, and they announced recently that they're going to be taking out 2 of the worst chemicals out of all of their products. One of them is triclosan, and then the other one is diethyl phthalate. And phthalates, also hormone disruptors, have been linked with breast cancer and some terrible things like that. And so when we have Breast Cancer Awareness Month coming up in October, we're hugely alarmed that we're exposed to toxic chemicals in cosmetics that can actually increase our risk for breast cancer. So, what's going on? So we need to make sure that those chemicals are being taken out, because this industry is virtually unregulated. These companies are basically policing themselves. If they say that a product, they've tested it for safety, they can go ahead and sell it on the shelves, and there's no one really looking out for our health and making sure that the products that are sold on the shelves are actually safe for us to use long term.
Sarita, God, I'm having so much trouble saying your name today, Sarita. When you talk about there's no government enforcement, really nail that down to people, because everybody thinks, oh, the FDA, whoever's watching out for us. They're not.
That's right. Yeah, the industry is really unregulated. Basically, what's happening is that the current law on the books that governs cosmetics and chemicals in cosmetics, it's the Food, Drug, and Cosmetics Act of 1938. So this law, which has really not been updated since that time, is over 70 years old. It's not working. And so what's happening is we need smarter laws on the books that's going to protect everyone from this toxic chemical exposure. A lot of us are concerned about the products we use and the chemicals that are in them, but a lot more folks out there aren't even aware. And so we want to make sure everyone gets that same level of safety and protection from this. And so the FDA, this is the current situation. The FDA doesn't have authority to test chemicals for safety before they're used in products and sold on the shelves. If a product is found to be unsafe because of some chemical in it that's harmful, the FDA cannot issue a mandatory recall. So, Brazilian Blowout, which was the hair straightening salon product that's made major news, it was found to have high levels of formaldehyde in it, which is a carcinogen. And there was no law saying that the FDA could say, no, you need to reformulate your product or stop selling it on the shelf. So they could continue using it and selling it. So it's things like that. The FDA does not have the authority to regulate this industry, and we need to make sure they get that authority. We need to make sure that any chemical that's a carcinogen, that's a reproductive toxin, that's a neurotoxin, cannot be used in products. So this is the kind of comprehensive safe cosmetics legislation that we're supporting and that we need to see happen in Congress.
I have to tell you, I have a friend who is currently battling cancer, and it's really disheartening to see somebody who's been using products like this or ingesting carcinogens all their lives, or being exposed, living in their homes, indoor pollution and whatnot, not knowing that they're not being protected, so they go and use. So, there's news saying that formaldehyde is carcinogenic. Big deal. That doesn't really get you anywhere. So we all know that something is causing all this cancer in people, kids, alarming rate of young kids getting cancer. So they know now that certain chemicals are carcinogenic. But you're telling me that FDA has no authority to say, company XYZ, you cannot use formaldehyde.
That's right.
Even though we all know that it causes cancer.
That's right. In fact, the European Union is miles ahead, and in fact, they're thousands of miles ahead of us. So they have a comprehensive law governing all of the European Union countries that bans and prohibits over 1,300 chemicals from cosmetics products. That over 1,300. In the United States, the FDA has a similar list. There's only 9 chemicals on that list. So when you compare the two things, you realize just how backward we are here in terms of linking the facts, the science around harmful chemicals, and allowing them to be used in consumable products like cosmetics. So we need to start, connecting the dots and making sure that that's translating into policy as well, so that the smarter laws are on the books that protect everyone from formaldehyde, from ethylene oxide, which is a breast carcinogen, from all of these chemicals, which some of them are intentionally put into the product because it serves some function. Others are contaminants. A lot of times there's chemicals that are used that are not themselves formaldehyde, but they release formaldehyde into the container. And so those chemicals also, we need to make sure that those are also on the list to be banned. And yeah.
So Walmart, I wrote a post about it as soon as the news came out. I said that's great because, although I personally don't go to Walmart, I'll tell you I can't open my eyes when I go to Walmart or Target, all these big stores, because of the chemicals, whether I'm allergic to them or not, I just can't breathe in those stores, so I don't go. But for those people who do go and they do need to shop there, it's good to know that they are voluntarily removing these 10 chemicals. But there's no guarantee that other chemicals are being produced and being replaced.
Right.
Instead of these 10 chemicals, that might be carcinogenic and harmful, let's say, 7-10 years down the road, they're going to find out, just like BPS. BPA is being phased out, and now they're being replaced with BPS or something else that we don't know about yet until that's proven to be harmful. So
exactly.
So these companies are just replacing one with the other. So they're really, even though Walmart is getting rid of these 10, and Procter & Gamble is getting rid of, the 2. So it's like bottomless pit. You get rid of 2, and you have 200 others that are being put on the market.
Yeah.
So what do consumers do? What do we do?
It's tough because a lot of the time, whatever reformulation process is going on, we're not really made aware of it as consumers. And so a lot of this is going on behind closed doors, and we're told that certain chemicals are being phased out. We don't know what it's being replaced with. And so that's why the pressure that we place on companies to not only get some of the chemicals out that we know are harmful, we also need to put pressure on them to make sure that whatever ingredients they're using as substitutes are also safe. So that continues to be part of the message that, it's great to take triclosan out, but what are you using in its place, and making sure that that's also not going to, as you say, cause problems, sooner or further down the road for our health, for the greater environment. So that continues to be part of the work of pushing companies to do the right thing and to be better corporate citizens in this country. So we push them to take the bad chemicals out. We also push them to replace them with safer ingredients.
So tell us a little bit about the legislation that's being proposed.
Yeah, so the Safe Cosmetics and Personal Care Products Act was introduced in the House of Representatives earlier this year, and that is really the sort of idea of comprehensive safe cosmetics legislation that we need. The provisions in that bill would do what we need in this country to make the cosmetics industry safer and healthy and make sure their products are not harming our health. So some of the things that this legislation would do is it would ban carcinogens and reproductive toxins from being used in products that are sold. It would just blanket, prohibit them from being used. And right now we don't have that. Formaldehyde can be used, things like that. So we need to have a pretty high bar in terms of what's full-on banned from being used in products. It would allow the FDA to assess the safety of ingredients before they can be used in products. Basically, right now, the burden of proof is on the FDA to prove that a chemical is harmful to ban it. Instead, it should be the other way, right? Companies should prove that a chemical is safe before they can use it in products. So we need to shift that balance and make sure that our health is taken more seriously than it is right now. And then finally, I mean, not finally, there's a lot of different provisions in this bill, but the last one I'll mention here is that it would give the FDA authority to issue a mandatory recall. So if a product is found to be unsafe because it contains a carcinogen or high levels of a chemical linked to learning disabilities, for example, the FDA can say, no, you need to take that product off the shelves. So this is just sort of some of the key pieces of this legislation that we need to see move forward. And just to give you sort of the latest news hot off the press, my colleague Janet Noodleman, who is the director of the Campaign for Safe Cosmetics, just got back from Washington, D.C., and she's been talking with the FDA to see how can we really figure out how to support this kind of legislation that would be bipartisan, but that would protect us in these various ways in terms of proper labeling, proper safety assessments. How can we really work together to support this kind of legislation in Congress? So that kind of thing is just happening. We need to sort of work work across the aisle, make it a bipartisan effort, because this is an issue that affects all of us.
So where is it right now in legislation? Is it in the House of Representatives? Is it in committee? Where is it?
It's been introduced. It was introduced by Representatives Schakowsky and Markey in March, and so since that time, we've been advocating for it, and we've had a lot of people, thousands and thousands of people across the country, tell their representative that they want their representative to support the Safe Cosmetics and Personal Care Products Act. It hasn't moved out of that, but this is what I'm saying. The kind of pressure that's placed when we introduce legislation like this is that, and the consumer demand, and you have private companies volunteering to make changes. You have these, broad strokes happening across the country. It's actually showing representatives, congressional representatives, that we can be taking this as a bipartisan issue, and we can be working towards a solution that can help everybody and that everyone can support. So right now, the Safe Cosmetics Act, stands. It's been introduced in Congress, but what's happening at the same time is that there's these larger conversations going on, with Democrats, with Republicans, with independents, with all sorts of folks, to say how can we make this legislation, make some kind of change happen through Congress that would give us comprehensive legislation for this.
Now, some of our listeners may be a little bit confused because we had on Lindsay Dahl probably about a month or two ago, and we talked about the Reformed Safe Chemical Act. Yeah. How does your act and their act, don't they kind of talk about the same things, or are they very separate?
Yeah, well, it's easy to be confused because we're generally talking about harmful chemicals in consumer products. So it's easy to kind of pull everything together and say, there should be legislation that covers all of these different products. But in fact, it's actually not the case. So the chemicals, the CSIA Act, which actually covers consumer products in other categories. It covers a whole host of other areas that are not cosmetics. So because of the Food, Drug, and Cosmetics Act, which was passed, like I said, back in the 1930s, it set cosmetics apart from all of the other consumer products. And so now what we need is legislation that also covers cosmetics products, but that is going to hold a high standard for safety, which, as Lindsay Dahl, I'm sure, talked about, they're also working for in terms of the chemicals policy.
Now let's talk, Karen brought up a really good point, when she was talking about her friend who is probably using, not the best of products. But when a lot of people come on and they say formaldehyde and words that we can't even pronounce, well, in my case, I would probably not pronounce any of them, but what do people do? I mean, it's easy to say don't use stuff with these large names with it. What can they go to your site? Is there a list of things that are okay? What does the average consumer do?
Absolutely. Well, we talk about a number of things that people can do in their own lives and then as part of this larger movement to really be empowered and to take this on as not something that prohibits you and says don't use this and don't use that, but to really move forward to say, this is something I use and that's something I can feel proud of. And then also being part of this national movement. So just to kind of go through some of those tips, just one of them is kind of simple, and especially for those who can't afford some of the products that might sell for higher prices, is to just use fewer products. Use them less often. It's about that prolonged chemical exposure over the course of our lives. So reducing that by using fewer products. Also read the labels. I know it can be really tricky because of the names that are so hard to pronounce. Ingredient labels can be super long, and so but we do offer resources at safecosmetics.org. Things you can tear out and put in your wallet so that the next time you go shopping, when you read those ingredient labels which ones to look out for and which ones to try to avoid. Generally speaking, skip fragrance. Fragrance is something that it can actually include hundreds of different chemicals under that one name, fragrance. It's used in tons of different products, colognes, perfumes, but also shampoo. Anything might have fragrance on that ingredient label. And they don't have to tell us which ingredients are in there. And what we found through product testing is that it might include some of the worst chemicals that are used.
But I also heard that some essential oils you should be careful too. So a lot of people are going away from fragrance, and they're going in, they're using essential oils. But some essential oils are not so healthy either?
Well, I mean, I couldn't tell you exactly which of the essential oils to watch out for, but definitely, the point is, if you do need to use a fragrance, maybe you don't want to dump your favorite perfume, use it less often, or try not to use it altogether. With essential oils, try to kind of stay informed about which ones are the best and safest to use. Okay.
Also, a lot of people are making their own DIY products.
Yes, that's right.
Because they want to avoid all these chemicals. And truthfully, I get confused, so I just avoid it altogether. So I want to make my own things at home, but of course, we have failures too. But should we watch out for some certain things when we are making our own DIY products at home?
Well, yeah. I mean, it's important to kind of look at those ingredient lists. Sometimes some DIY recipes might include some of the things that we also talk about trying to avoid. They might say just drop a little commercial ounce of your favorite perfume or something. Exactly.
Like dishwashing liquid, and I see this all the time, and I cringe because the exact chemicals that we're trying to avoid in some of these dishwashing liquids or detergents, and they're not using cups of it, but at least they're using small portions, but they're still using those petroleum-based products.
That's right. And so what we've done is, we did a review of some of the DIY cosmetics recipes out there, and we kind of put together a collection of some of our favorites that we know, the ingredients of which are really great and smell great and feel great. So we have a collection of them on our website of DIY recipes, and one of them, just to kind of give you a sense of the breadth of them, one of them is a lip gloss that uses beet juice. For that color. So just using a different collection of oils and beeswax, adding the beet juice to give you that lip gloss, lip color.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
And will you give us that link afterwards? Because there's two links that you need to give us. The one where you could tear out, and take it to the store, and the one now, the do yourself,
Right.
list. That's really great. So I hope that you'll give us those, and we'll put those actually in the
Mm-hmm.
article that we list on Green Sisterhood, because those are great links.
Absolutely.
That was a great question, Karen, by the way.
Well, you know me, I want to try to make everything at home.
Right. But that was a
Yeah.
great question, because people, think that everything that's made at home is fine, and it's not.
No.
That's right. You have to be aware. And the other thing I'll say when we're talking about tips is that I know a lot of folks, when they're shopping and they're trying to be wise and be wise shoppers, it can be really challenging. Sometimes something that people look for is the word natural or organic on a personal care product on the packaging. And what I have to say is that that can actually be really misleading. The thing is that with cosmetics, there's no standard for using terms like organic or natural or anything like that. So it's really important to, again, read those ingredient labels, know what to avoid, make your own cosmetics, or do the same kinds of use the same tips for safety, because natural and organic can just be marketing terms, really.
Good point. Because it does attract you when you look at a bottle and it says natural, or it does say organic, but organic can mean organic or inorganic. You could have carbon, it doesn't have to have carbon. It's not necessarily certified organic.
Exactly.
But they use those terms all the time, and I used to hate those companies that use those terms so loosely, and I actually deleted a review that I wrote because I was just so mad at the company and not telling me the truth. So yeah, it does happen a lot. Good point.
Now, another thing too is that the legislation that you talked about, how do we as consumers help you? Is there a take action page?
There absolutely is. Again, on the website, again, so much of our work has to do with advancing this kind of comprehensive policy reform. And so there's a great way for individuals and communities to take action right online. There's a letter you can sign and send that's very simple and easy to do, and you can forward it to your friends and family and people you know to also take action and support the legislation.
One thing that I wanted to bring up, and I probably should have talked about it when you mentioned it, is you talked about the difference in the amount of products that are used by women versus teenagers, and it's scary.
Mm-hmm.
And considering that they also are so much more, they're still developing. So can you talk a little bit about that, so maybe some moms can hear about, what they should be aware of with their teenage daughters?
Sure, yeah. So just to review, the average adult woman uses about 12 products a day, and the average for teenage girls is 17 products a day. And so just that difference of 5 products a day is the difference of hundreds more chemicals and exposure to those amounts every single time you use a product. And so the important thing about that period of time when you're a teenager is that some of those chemicals are actually hitting you harder at that time in your development. Your hormones are in overdrive, and like I said, those hormone disrupting chemicals can really be very potent at that time. And so for moms, for mothers of teenage girls, it would be important to share these tips with your teenage daughter, to make some of these DIY recipes with her, to kind of make it really fun and not. Sometimes it can sound like a depressing issue that there's chemicals linked to cancer in your shampoo, but it can actually be fun. It can be empowering. The other thing about communicating this message to teenagers is that they're really looking to be empowered and to be to take action, to be leaders. And so we're seeing this movement growing among teenagers and youth to really step it up and really show that they are also the face of this national movement for safe cosmetics.
That's great. That's really great. Thank you so much, Sarada, for coming on and telling us about the legislation. I honestly didn't know the difference between the Safe Chemical Act and yours. I kept thinking, is it just two different people trying to get in legislation? But you really made it very clear. You're going to provide us with a bunch of links. Everybody, there'll be links about take action. There'll be a link about the do-it-yourself and a link about tearing out the the little piece of paper to take it to the store, because that's really important, because that just doesn't mean anything if you don't know what to do when you get there. And next week we're going to be talking about genetically modified organisms, and we're going to have Elizabeth Latter on, and she's with the I think the 522, I think the Portland organization or the Oregon organization. We're going to be talking about
Washington.
Washington. So it's right. Thank you, Karen. It's it's been one of those days. Really important about supporting our fellow eco warriors over in Washington with the legislation of 522. So she's going to be on talking about that next week. Again, it's 2 o'clock East Coast time, same place. Hopefully we will be on at 2 o'clock and Google won't give us another wrench. So again, Swat, thank you so much for coming on, and thank you for telling us about why we need to be careful with our own cosmetic routine.
Thank you so much
for having me.